What if I told you that the Itadori family tree is even more bizarre than you can imagine? Get ready to dive into a completely crazy story where family relationships are more confusing than a 1,000-piece puzzle. Stick with me until the end, because you won't believe what you're about to discover. It was already strange enough to know that Itadori's mother was possessed by Kenjaku and, in that body, had a child with Itadori's father. But the story gets even more bizarre in chapter 257, where we learn that Itadori's father was actually the reincarnation of Sukuna's twin brother. This means that Kenjaku had a child with Itadori's father and, at the same time, with Sukuna's brother, as they were, in a way, the same person. This makes Kenjaku Itadori's mother and Sukuna his uncle. But the bizarreness doesn't stop there. Itadori himself couldn't escape this mess either, as he literally ate his own siblings by consuming Sukuna's fingers. That's right, it's as bizarre as it sounds. It seemed that the Itadori family is even more complicated and intriguing than we thought. Let's start by talking about each character and try to understand why Itadori's family attracted so much attention from the main villains of Jujutsu Kaisen. Right from the start, we see that Itadori possesses superhuman strength, capable of breaking Olympic records with ease. At first, we might think this is because he's a shonen protagonist, naturally stronger than average. But as the story progresses, we discover that Itadori was never an ordinary person. He is the result of a macabre creation planned by the millennial sorcerer Kenjaku, the mastermind behind the major events of Jujutsu Kaisen, who possessed the body of Suguru Geto. Kenjaku had a plan to create the perfect vessel for Sukuna to reincarnate without his host dying, as usually happened. He wanted to bring Sukuna back to life because he knew that, alone, he couldn't face all the sorcerers who would turn against him, especially the strongest of the modern era, Satoru Gojo. Having the strongest sorcerer in history as an ally would be perfect for Kenjaku to continue his agenda of merging the entire population of Japan with the sorcerer Tenjin, aiming to witness the result of this experiment and the pinnacle of sorcery evolution. Kenjaku, being an adept scientist and someone who seeks pure entertainment from his creation, devised this complex plan that culminated in Itadori's existence. Itadori's superhuman strength and his ability to be Sukuna's vessel are part of this grand experiment, meant to bring a new era to sorcery. Now that we understand Kenjaku's motivations for creating Yuji Itadori as the perfect vessel for Sukuna, let's break down each character, starting with the protagonist's mother, Kaori Itadori. Kaori Itadori is the easiest to explain, as we know little about her. We don't know her lineage, but she adopted her husband's surname, becoming Kaori Itadori. Although little known, Kaori was not an ordinary woman. She was a sorceress with a rare innate technique among sorcerers called anti-gravity, which allowed her to manipulate gravity around her, reducing or increasing her weight as desired. We never saw Kaori use her technique, but Kenjaku, even after changing to Suguru Geto's body, managed to use it. This ability was crucial in his fight against Yuki Tsukumo, preventing Kenjaku from being killed. This demonstrates the power and importance of Kaori's technique. Considering that Kaori was a powerful sorceress with an innate technique, it makes sense that Kenjaku would be interested in her to the point of possessing her body. However, Kenjaku's true interest in the Itadori family is more linked to Yuji's paternal lineage. Before we talk about Jin, Yuji's father, let's consider the possibility that Kenjaku was originally a woman, which would explain why he possessed female bodies. This wouldn't be an unprecedented plot twist in Jujutsu Kaisen, as we saw with the sorcerer Tenjin, who was originally a woman. Now, about Jin Itadori, the protagonist's father. Initially, we knew little about him, except for a flashback in chapter 143, where he appears holding baby Yuji. We also see Kaori with a scar on her forehead, a visible mark of Kenjaku's victim, indicating that Jin knew something was wrong with Kaori. In chapter 257, we learn that Sukuna had a twin brother whom he devoured in their mother's womb. This may have been a phenomenon called fetuses in fetu, where one twin absorbs the other. After being devoured, Sukuna's brother's soul wandered until it found Kenjaku. Sukuna suggests that his brother's soul reincarnated in Jin Itadori. The most plausible theory is that Kenjaku, 1,000 years ago, turned Sukuna's brother's soul into a cursed object and made Jin ingest this object, thus possessing his body. Kenjaku did the same with several sorcerers, turning their souls into cursed objects, forcing people to ingest these objects. This would explain why Jin treated Kaori's situation with naturalness, as he was no longer Jin, but Sukuna's brother. This bizarre situation raises several questions. Where is Yuji's father now? Did he appear at the end of the manga? Perhaps Yuji's grandfather wanted to reveal the truth about Yuji's parents before he died in the first episode. He knew something was wrong and wanted to warn Yuji. And since we mentioned the old man, let's talk a bit about the protagonist's paternal grandfather, Weisuke Itadori. Little is known about Weisuke. It was never stated if he was a sorcerer, being, for now, just a human without any special abilities. His most intriguing participation occurred during the previously mentioned flashback, where Weisuke is seen in a hospital with his son, Jin Itadori, holding newborn Yuji. It's clear that Weisuke cares about his son. When Weisuke warns Jin about Kaori, Yuji's mother, he asks Jin to leave her forever, as he didn't trust her. However, Weisuke's conversation ends when Kaori, actually Kenjaku in her body, enters, asking Weisuke what was wrong and saying everything was fine. It's possible that Weisuke knew his son was involved with someone who wasn't exactly who she claimed to be, but Jin, in the end, didn't listen. And now we know why. That was no longer the real Jin. Now, going down the family tree a bit, from the union of Sukuna's brother in Jin's body and Kenjaku in Kaori's body came the boy Yuji Itadori, a mix of direct kinship with Sukuna, hand-picked genes, and perhaps altered and fortified in the womb, making him the perfect vessel for Sukuna. Moving to the side of our family tree, we have Yuji Itadori's 9 siblings, who are the cursed wombs of the death painting. Let's understand why they are considered Yuji's siblings or half-sibling. Going back more than 150 years ago, at the beginning of the Meiji era, a woman with a special genetic makeup gave birth to a half-human, half-cursed child. It was a mysterious pregnancy that caused her to be rejected by her family, and with her child in her arms, she fled to a temple run by the Jujutsu sorcerer Noritoshi Kumo, known as the most evil sorcerer in history. Noritoshi forced the woman and her child to become prisoners of his intellectual curiosity. In total, the woman had 9 pregnancies that resulted in 9 abortions, but all records around this and the woman were destroyed over time. At some point in history, the Tokyo school managed to rescue and protect all 9 fetuses, which would later be called the death painting. Returning to present times, fetuses numbered 1 to 3, which possessed special grade energy, were stolen by Mahito, who along with Kenjaku gave them new bodies, becoming known as Choso, Eso, and Kichizu. We don't know if Noritoshi Kumo had been possessed by Kenjaku since that time, but given Kenjaku's interest in experiments involving Jujutsu, I would venture to say that he decided to possess Noritoshi Kumo as soon as he learned of that woman's existence. This is because Noritoshi Kumo managed the temple where the woman came from. So, Kenjaku possessing the body of the temple leader would be extremely beneficial for him to place himself in power and conduct the experiments he wanted with that woman. Or it could be that Kenjaku had already possessed Noritoshi Kumo's body before that, and from the beginning, it was Kenjaku himself who caused the woman to conceive her first half-human, half-cursed child. To me, either option would be valid. At the end of the day, we can't know about this gap in history. What we do know is that, according to Choso, the eldest of the death paintings, Noritoshi seemed to have mixed his own blood with some of the cursed wombs, resulting in the Kumo family's innate technique, blood manipulation. Despite initially aligning with Kenjaku, Choso changed sides after discovering that in the past, Kenjaku had assumed the identity of his father and creator, Noritoshi Kumo. Upon discovering that Itadori was also the result of a Kenjaku experiment, Choso decided to help him and consider him his younger brother. Speaking of brothers, we now need to talk about the other death paintings as well. Like Choso, his brothers Eso and Kichizu were also considered special grade and were killed by the teamwork of Itadori and Nobara at the end of the first season, before Itadori had any idea that they were his brothers. But the same doesn't apply to the other 6 cursed wombs. It was revealed in chapter 257 of the manga that Itadori consumed his other 6 siblings, and that's why he gained the blood manipulation technique. So, the other siblings now live within Itadori, not literally, but metaphorically, as they were converted into cursed energy within Itadori's own body. Having understood the Itadori family tree, I now raise the following question for you. Did Kenjaku become interested in Jin because he was already the reincarnation of Sukuna's brother, or did Kenjaku's interest come for a reason before that? It's impossible to say for sure, but the second option remains very valid, and the reason for this would be the prior kinship of the Itadori family with Sukuna even before this whole story of Sukuna's brother reincarnating in Itadori's father's body. I explained to you, it's not new that we can see a physical resemblance, not only of Itadori, but even of his grandfather to Sukuna. Besides Besides the very characteristic hair color, there's a noticeable similarity between the Itadoris and Heian era Sukuna. In other words, the idea I want to bring here is that, regardless of Itadori's father being a reincarnation of Sukuna's brother, the Itadori family's relationship with Sukuna goes back long before that. Considering that the family's grandfather also resembles Sukuna, this relationship would be the last piece of the puzzle to justify once and for all why Kenjaku specifically chose Itadori's parents to conceive the one who would be Sukuna's vessel, having possessed Itadori's mother and, in theory, forced Itadori's father to become a vessel for Sukuna's brother. Hey guys, that's it for today's video. What do you think about Itadori's family? A bit confusing, right? If you enjoyed this video, I'm leaving 2 more videos here at the end for you. I'm sure you'll love them because they're amazing. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. With that said, see you in the next one.